This is a guy who is a real Bernie Sanders supporter, open Bernie Sanders supporter who worked for the DNC. The DNC absolutely rigged the primary. He was there while this was all going down. So was Donna Brazile. Everyone was aware of it. The guy got fucking murdered after he leaked information to WikiLeaks. If you don't think that's a little weird, what are you looking at? What delusional rose-colored glasses are you looking at your party from? You think you're in some Julia Roberts movie from 1990? This is real shit. Some guy got killed. He was 24 years old. He was a young guy who was very optimistic and had this view of the world where the guy fucking wore American flag pants and shirt. There's a famous picture of him with a beer on. He's a patriot in a lot of ways. He wanted to be involved in the political process. He was very idealistic. He was probably shattered by finding out that the party that he was working for was corrupting the democratic process, and he gets murdered. And you're like, oh, the conspiracy theories. No, he got murdered. But when it comes to things that are rock solid and clear, like that Seth Rich was murdered and people want to ignore it, I'm like, what the fuck do you think happened? There has to be some sort of a disconnect here. When a person is giving information to WikiLeaks that exposes corruption inside the very organization that's responsible for the fucking Democratic Party.
Julian Assange, the head of WikiLeaks, once more earning the ire of the Democratic Party in the United States. This time he's offering money for information into the death of a young staffer.
Our whistleblowers go to significant efforts to get us material and often very significant risks. As a 27-year-old works for the DNC, who was shot in the back, murdered just 2 weeks ago.
That was just a robbery, I believe, wasn't it?
No.
Proud of being Jewish, and that is an essential part of who I am.
Wasserman Schultz, the chair of the Democratic National Committee.
If elected president, she would not be reappointed to be chair of the DNC.
So this WikiLeaks thing with Julian Assange is the craziest shit ever, when he said there's consequences to sharing information with us.
Rod Wheeler has had some pretty revolutionary statements. First, he says that there was a contract that was sent to the family where they actually made it clear that he could speak to the media, that even though he would not be speaking on behalf of the family, he was perfectly fine with speaking on behalf of himself. Although the family, also known as Brad Bowman, said that he was not authorized to speak on the family's behalf. Brad Bowman is a professional public relations consultant, and he understands that if he would have called Rod Wheeler a liar, that would have been a lawsuit for that ass. You cannot call a private investigator a liar when he has documented proof, contractual proof, that he was allowed to be saying what he said and that nothing that he said was in fact a lie. They tried to make it seem like Rod Wheeler retracted his statements, but he did not. Brad Bowman ran with it and then, of course, fished the story out to all the media sources, and they started running with the story saying that Rod Wheeler, the private investigator, retracted all of his statements. By the way, Rod Wheeler and Brad Bowman actually do not know each other. However, Rod Wheeler said that Brad Bowman had literally been spreading misinformation about Rod Wheeler and trying to smear his name he said literally all across the world, and to essentially kill his credibility. So Aaron Rich actually, for some reason, ended up on the phone with his wife while talking to, who was a lawyer, but while talking to Rod Wheeler. Aaron Rich says, okay, yeah, everything is fine, you can investigate. Oh, however, don't ask anything about emails. And he said it over and over. Oh, don't ask anything about his job either. And he said, well, why not? Mind you, Rod Wheeler, in his mind, has no idea what's going on in the world politically. Like, he's aware of what's going on, but he doesn't know Seth Rich's attachment to it. He does appearances on Fox News, but obviously he's not too wrapped up in the Democratic Party and its goings on. So he said it was actually really weird, but not that he didn't take it seriously, but he kind of like, okay, well, that's just weird, we're going to move on. So then he goes to the bar that Seth Rich was at before he passed away, and then the bartender said, oh yeah, Aaron told me you were going to come. I was expecting you. Rod Wheeler was obviously surprised. And then he said, but just to let you know, we can't talk about the emails or any computers because Aaron said I could not. Weird, right? Okay, so then Rod Wheeler talks to the girlfriend. The girlfriend says, Seth Rich's girlfriend, the girlfriend says, hey, I was expecting you. Aaron told me that you were going to call. And then but Rod Wheeler said the first thing she says to him is, but we cannot talk about emails and that we cannot talk about computers. And she said, but what I can tell you, however, is that Seth Rich had a problem with 2 of his supervisors. But when, weirdly enough, he asked for the names, she said first that she could not tell him. Then she said, well, I don't know their names, but I do know that they were having problems at his job. That's really weird, right? Okay, going forward. So then what ends up happening is that he goes back to Aaron Rich because the email thing is officially an issue. When 3 people and then the police department, because he said he was going to contact the police department to get the cell phone and the computers and things like that. Aaron Rich was like, oh, don't worry about the cell phone. He was like, well, why not worry about the cell phone? We did all the investigation. We know that it's had nothing to do with his job. I told you to stop prying about his job. I told you to stop prying about the emails. He's like, whoa, man, this could have something to do with his murders. He could have talked to somebody. He could have, did blah, blah, blah. And they refused. He refused to. First he said he didn't know where it was at. Then he said the cops don't have it. And then whenever Rod Wheeler asked to get the AT&T records, just simple AT&T records, he was like, no. We don't need to do that. I've already investigated. We know that had nothing to do with his murder.
This is according to the FBI report. They found what he had done. He had submitted a series of documents, of emails, some juicy emails from the DNC.
Now to a Fox 5 exclusive. Since DNC staffer Seth Rich was murdered, still no solid answers until now.
Someone shot and killed Rich last July in Northwest. Now, police suggested the killing in the Bloomdale neighborhood was a botched robbery, but online conspiracy theories tied the murder to Rich's work at the Democratic National Committee.
And ever since we learned Rich was a DNC staffer, the conspiracy theories online have taken a life of their own. But today, Fox 5 has learned there is new information that could prove these theorists are in fact right. New information from the family's private investigator suggests there is tangible evidence on Seth Rich's laptop that confirms he was communicating with WikiLeaks prior to his death. Now the question is, why has DC police, as the lead agency on the investigation for the past 10 months, insisted this was a botched robbery when till this day there is no evidence to suggest that? The Rich family hired Rod Wheeler, a former MPD homicide detective, to run a parallel investigation into their son's death. Wheeler says he believes there's a cover-up and the police department has been told to back down from the investigation.
The police department nor the FBI has been forthcoming. They haven't been cooperating at all. I believe that the answer to solving his death lies on that computer, which I believe is either at the police department or either at the FBI. I've been told both.
But you have sources at the FBI
saying that there is information
For
that
sure.
could link Seth Rich to WikiLeaks?
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's confirmed. Actually, I have a source inside the police department that has looked at me straight in the eye and said, Rod, we were told to stand down in this case, and I can't share any information with you. Now, that's highly unusual for a murder investigation, especially from a police department. Again, I don't think it comes from the chief's office, but I do believe there is a correlation between the mayor's office and the DNC.